All right, we are live. Welcome in, Broncos country. Hope everybody is doing absolutely fantastic here on this game day Monday. I am your host, Gage Madrid, and welcome in to the Denver Broncos pregame tailgate show for Week 10 Monday Night Football Buffalo Bills. This is a game that could completely change the overall trajectory for the Denver Broncos season. This could be a game that could potentially ignite the start of a playoff push for the Denver Broncos. We've got Glenn Hauser in the house, my fellow co-host on the 5280 podcast. Welcome in, my friend. Good to see you, buddy. We got, oh yeah, Kool-Aid Man in the house. Let's go. Hope everyone is doing well. If you guys could just do me a quick favor, if you could just leave a like on this stream, I would really appreciate it. That is a free and easy way to show your support for the channel, as well as subscribe if you have yet to do so. Those are both ways to tell YouTube's algorithm to push us out, helps us get seen by more and more members of Broncos country, just like you and me. So like I was alluding to earlier, guys, this is going to be a game that could completely change the outlook of the Denver Broncos season. It could potentially ignite the start of a playoff push. We've got a long ways to go, certainly, but the easier part of the Denver Broncos schedule, at least on paper, is down the stretch here. So if the Broncos can get a win tonight in Buffalo, then that could potentially start up a winning streak for the Denver Broncos, and that would be absolutely huge. We got Garrett Shelton in the house. Good to see you, Garrett. Hope you were doing absolutely awesome. I'm curious, guys, before we jump in, and we're going to jump into Von Miller. We're going to jump into how Josh Allen and this Bills offense matches up against the Broncos defense, and how Russell Wilson, Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin, the Broncos offense, how those guys are all going to match up against Buffalo's fairly shorthanded defense. So this is going to be a really interesting game, because if there is a chance for the Denver Broncos to get a win against the Buffalo Bills, it is this game. Much like 2 weeks ago, if there was ever a chance for the Denver Broncos to get a win against Kansas City when they were shorthanded, when Patrick Mahomes was ill, that was the game to do it, and the Broncos were able to pull that one off. This is a game where you have a wounded opponent, and the Broncos are going to be entering this one at relatively high health, so I'm curious to see at what level of attack Denver comes out with this one. Are they going to come out firing right away, or are they going to kind of fiddle around coming out of their bye week? That's going to be something really interesting to see. We've got Jim Miller in the house. How you doing, Jim? Good to see you. Jimmy Sauber as well. Let's go Broncos. Denver Broncos for life. We got guitarist Michael Stark saying, Bills turn this mess around tonight. Go Bills. It's very possible, honestly, because this is the game that the Bills are going to need to get themselves right as a team. This is probably their easiest opponent in the Denver Broncos coming up on their schedule. Well, them and probably the New York Jets, but we all know how the Bills struggled in week 1 against the New York Jets. But we'll talk about all that in just a second. Jim says, I don't like our chances tonight. We got DS in the house saying easy win. Bills are going to lose, Michael. How you doing, Antelope? Good to see you. Says, what's up, Gage? Hope you are doing well, my friend. Met you out at training camp. I believe we met each other at a game as well. I can't recall off the top of my head. Great to see you, though, Antelope. Great supporter here of Denver Broncos Syndicate. But to start off, guys, I know that this is going to be a very emotional game for a lot of people in Broncos country, myself included. This is the very first time that we're going to be going up against Von Miller. I am going to probably end up shedding a tear over this one. Von Miller is the main reason for the greatest football memory of my life in Super Bowl 50. Von Miller is somebody who almost single-handedly changed the trajectory of the Denver Broncos franchise, at least over the last several years. It was very emotional for me when Von Miller departed. Von spoke on the departure and said that there's no ill will towards the Denver Broncos. It was a very amicable departure. He's looking forward to seeing all the guys out there. This is honestly kind of a different team than what Von was here to see. I mean, a lot of the guys that Von played with are gone, but some are still here. You know, Baron Browning, Justin Simmons, Pat Surtain, those kind of guys. Vaughn, of course, knows Russell Wilson, so Vaughn says he's excited to see everyone, but he's also looking forward to potentially getting his first sack of the season against his former team. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see if Von Miller can kind of turn back the clock a little bit. He struggled a little bit coming off of his ACL injury, so we'll see if Von Miller can turn back the clock a little and look like the Von Miller of the Broncos in tonight's game. Jimmy says, I love your videos. Thanks for all the videos. Keep up the good work. Thank you so much, Jimmy. I appreciate it. David says, any given Sunday. Well, in this case, any given Monday. Gage, what is GYA team? I'm not sure what you mean by that. DS. We only met at practice, but I haven't been to a game. Oh, okay, that makes sense, Antelope. Gotcha. I definitely recall meeting at training camp for sure. That was awesome. Glenn says, anyone taking bets on how many minutes in? Gage cries about Vaughn. I know I'll probably shed a tear a little bit during pregame when the broadcast promotes it and all that stuff, but once we get into the game, it's going to be business as usual, trying to root for the Broncos to get a much-needed win here. Because if the Broncos can pull off this win, I'm not going to necessarily say that the Broncos' playoff chances would be dead if the Broncos lose this game. But if the Broncos lose this game, they're going to have to basically win almost every other game except for the Lions game and possibly another NFC game. I can't recall off the top of my head. They can get away with a couple of losses there, but this game would really solidify the Broncos' chances to turn their season around and squeeze into the playoffs. Dimitri says, Gage, I'm here, but I got my Justin Simmons jersey on. That's awesome. What if anyone else out there is rocking a jersey? Let me know what jersey you guys are rocking. I bet there are going to be a lot of people out there rocking a Von Miller jersey tonight. I'm not going to get overly superstitious, but every game that I haven't rocked Broncos gear, we've won. So I'm trying to continue that trend tonight. Let's see if it works. Knock on wood. Let's see if it works, man. Jay says Vaughn will definitely have a sack in this game. You know he's going to be a lot more emotionally driven to get that sack in this game. He's going to be going up against Mike McGlinchey for most of the game, so you know that he's going to have a favorable matchup in this one for sure. Pumped for the game, Traveling Texan says, good to see you. Hope for a competitive game at least. Me too, man. Me too. Gage, I got my Wilson jersey on, ready to go. Jimmy says, Bills have never lost at home. The reason why it says they're 4 at home is because of the international game in London, correct, where they lost to the Jacksonville Jaguars. However, you could argue for sure that the Bills could have lost that game against the New York Giants at home. That was a game that they really struggled and were a missed pass interference call in the end zone away from potentially losing that game. So the Bills have been vulnerable at home. No opponent to this point has been able to capitalize on that. Let's see if the Denver Broncos can continue that or can break that trend. They did a very unorthodox thing this week at practice. Sean Payton put the Bills logo on the Broncos training grounds at UC or at a Centura Health Training Center down at Dove Valley. So I'm curious to see what the meaning and reasoning behind that was. If it was a motivational tactic, if it was a preparedness tactic, or some combination of both. I think that's a really, really interesting thing that Sean Payton did there. And apparently he did the same thing when the Saints were getting ready to go up against a big opponent. Sean Payton recognizes how big of a game this is for the Denver Broncos this year. And the fact that they didn't trade anybody away at the trade deadline tells me that the Broncos are trying to compete this year and they're trying to make a potential playoff push. If they're serious about that, they've got to win this game. They absolutely have to. Vaughn's missed tackle against the Bengals against Joe Mixon there. Yeah, that was ugly at the very end of the game. That could have given the Bills a chance to get Josh Allen the ball back, to go downfield and win the game. Unfortunately, that did not happen. The Bengals got a first down after Joe Mixon broke the tackle, and they won the game. So you know that Vaughn is going to have that play kind of living in his head for a while. And again, that's all more reason for Vaughn to want to show out in this game. I see us running a lot in this game. Yeah, for sure. And that's actually a great transition. So how will the Denver Broncos offense be able to match up against this Buffalo Bills defense? The Bills' defense is actually very shorthanded right now. Obviously, two of their biggest stars, Tre'Davious White, their all-pro corner, and then Matt Milano, their stud linebacker, are out for the season with injuries. So that means that the Denver Broncos are going to be dealing with a shorthanded Bills defense, and it's not just them. Micah Hyde, their star safety, is out for this game. Christian Benford, their starting corner, and then Terrell Bernard, who actually was the Bills' who was filling in really well at the linebacker position for the Buffalo Bills, Terrell Bernard. He was questionable coming into this game with a concussion. I'm going to be curious to see if Bernard was able to clear the concussion protocol. If he's in, that'll definitely help the Bills defense. But this is a chance for the Broncos offense to be able to do what they want to do. If they want to establish the run, they can do that. If they want to establish the passing game and get a quick strike whenever they need to, they can do that. They almost have reign of the roost against this Buffalo Bills defense. And Von Miller, again, has not looked like the Von Miller that we all know coming off of this injury. He's still trying to get back to his normal self. So I think that's going to take a little bit more time. This could be a chance for Russell Wilson and the Broncos offense to put up some points. If they can establish the run game, that'll obviously be able to lead for us to use the play action game with Marvin Mims, take some deep shots that way. It all starts with feeding Javonte Williams, feeding Jaleel McLaughlin, sprinkling in some Samaje Perine like we've been doing. Just the sheer volume of carries is what I'm looking for. Obviously, the Broncos with Javonte Williams last week, he didn't even average 4 yards per carry on the ground, but it was the sheer presence and threat of him rushing. He had 27 carries. That alone was a difference maker in the Kansas City Chiefs game 2 weeks ago. So that's going to be very, very interesting to see if the Broncos replicate the game plan offensively that they had against the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't think that they could replicate it to a T because it was very dependent on screen passes and swing passes to the running back and 50-50 deep shots from Russell Wilson outside of the running game. I hope we can establish the deep shots off play action in this one because we might have to get into a shootout, especially if Josh Allen and this Bills offense gets hot. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see. Garrett says, I got my Arby's jersey on. That's hilarious. I have hope, but I don't trust this team, Chris says. I mean, I can see why a lot of people don't trust this team. This team hasn't proven to be trustworthy. You could almost argue, fluked out that win against Kansas City. However, as we've talked about on this channel throughout the week, the avenue is there for the Denver Broncos to pick up this huge, huge win and turn the trajectory of their season around. So that's going to be where the Broncos are going to have to be on their business. No penalties, play clean, consistent football, don't turn the ball over offensively. Antelope says it's going to be very similar offense versus the Chiefs, pound the rock. Jim says, I see the Bills getting 2 long touchdowns tonight. The defensive problems return. That's going to be interesting, man, because the defense played really, really well against the Kansas City Chiefs offense. They basically bracketed Travis Kelce, played zone coverage against him, man coverage everywhere else, almost like basketball-type coverage with the Kansas City Chiefs offense last week, and it worked. I could see a scenario where they bracket Stephon Diggs. They're also going to have to take into account Dalton Kincaid. I want the the Denver Broncos to play too high press man coverage against the Buffalo Bills offense tonight. I want them to basically dare Buffalo to run the football. Otherwise, Josh Allen is going to have to force stuff into coverage and play hero ball, and that's what the Bills have done the past several weeks that has gotten them into trouble. They're able to run the football, they just haven't done it. So I almost want them to play too high coverage throughout the entire game and dare Buffalo to run the football. It's going to be interesting to see if tonight's the night that Buffalo finally utilizes guys such as James Cook, as well as former Denver Bronco Latavius Murray, in order to maybe get their ground game going here. And so yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting for sure if the Broncos can basically dare Buffalo to run the football in this one. I heard that the Bills logo painting was a thing Russell wanted and had pushed to be done in the past with different opponents. At least that's what McAfee had said today. Well, I had heard that Sean Payton had done that previously in New Orleans, so maybe it was like a collaborative thing there. Maybe something that Russell had seen Sean do previously and pushed for it to return. Jimmy says, Broncos country, we've got to believe in this team. Let's go Broncos, Denver Broncos for life. Garrett Arby's beef and cheddar. The inactives should be out soon. Jim says, yeah, we'll peek on the inactives as soon as they're out. I'll go check and see when they're out in just 1 second. Show us the meats cage. What's my craziest Arby's story? I mean, I deal with a lot of just your typical fast food Karens, selfish people in the drive-thru, stuff like that. I don't have really anything overly crazy, at least, that I can share on this channel, because it would involve a lot of swear words and stuff that I'm really trying to avoid using on this channel. So, yeah, there's some stories that I do have, but I'm probably not going to share them, at least here on this particular channel. I've been calling for a lot of box one coverage on Kelsey for a long time, and what do you know? Vance Joseph actually listened and did that. I think this one might almost be more like a box two situation. I don't really know basketball that well, but basically bracket Dalton Kincaid, bracket Stephon Diggs, and make Josh Allen utilize his other options in the passing game, be it Gabe Davis, be it Khalil Shakir, be it Deontay Hardy, somebody like that. Hell, even James Cook out of the backfield. That's what the Bills are basically going to have to depend on. I'm hoping the Broncos kind of play that almost bracket two coverage, bring some stunts up front, make Josh Allen uncomfortable, get that pressure with a four-man rush, utilize Baron Browning, utilize Nick Bonito, obviously utilize Jonathan Cooper, and then obviously we can get some interior pressure from Zach Allen as well. That would be fantastic. Have you seen the new plans for the Broncos headquarters coming in 2026? I sure have. It looks absolutely fantastic. It's going to completely revolutionize both the player and fan experience over there at the Broncos training facility at Dove Valley. It's going to be absolutely incredible. I'm looking forward to the even bigger fan berm away from the sun. The player facilities are going to be now connected with the business side of the team. It's all going to be under one roof. Currently, the business side of the team operates out of the stadium. Obviously, the player operations operate out of Dove Valley. It's going to be really, really cool to see that. Nathaniel Hackett had a disaster piece yesterday. He sure did, man. That play calling from Nathaniel Hackett was just absolutely atrocious. Don't get me wrong, Zach Wilson was not good, and the Bills shot themselves in the foot with penalties on multiple occasions, especially on third down, or the Jets rather. But again, man, Nathaniel Hackett was just a complete and utter disaster in that game. Ronnie says defense needs to create turnovers. 100% they do. And Josh Allen has been somewhat turnover prone this season. That's why, again, I'm hoping they can take away his number one option in Stephon Diggs and then take away his number two option that's really has been established in the last couple of weeks in Dalton Kincaid, the tight end, the rookie tight end. So that will then force Josh Allen to hesitate, hold on to the ball, and that can hopefully lead to turnovers for guys like Jaquan McMillan, who obviously had a turnover last week, or Justin Simmons. I believe Simmons has picked off Josh Allen before in his career. That's going to be a big key as well, is just make Josh Allen hesitate just a little bit and make him uncomfortable and force him to play hero ball. Again, the way that the Bills can counter that, if the Broncos do indeed play this style of defense, is by running the football. They can run the football, like I've said, they just haven't committed to it. If they do indeed commit to running the football, that's where the Denver Broncos could be in some trouble here. Hopefully the Broncos facility has bleachers or something like that. I do believe I saw a tweet that said that bleachers will be at the facility during construction phase. That way fans will still be able to attend training camp. That was something I was a little bit worried about. I was like, oh crap, am I going to have to go out and get a media credential now? But it turns out that they're going to bring in some bleachers, at least during the construction phase for the new training facility. So yeah, that's currently the plan there. I'm going to jump on Twitter here and see if inactives are indeed out yet. They should be. Also, the Broncos did promote 2 players from the practice squad for this game, or elevate technically. Lucas Kroll, the tight end, rookie tight end who we got off New Orleans Saints at the beginning of the season, as well as David Sills, the versatile wide receiver who's probably going to see some special teams work tonight. He initially joined the league actually in 2019 as an undrafted free agent by the Buffalo Bills. And yes, indeed, we do have inactives. I'll go ahead and bring that in right away. Sorry. So, for the Bills, Micah Hyde, we obviously knew he was going to be out. Christian Benford, Jermaine Ifedi, Alec Anderson, Puda Ford, their defensive tackle, and Braylon Spector, the linebacker. Then here for the Broncos, J.L. Skinner, Nate Atkins. That's a little bit interesting. I'm kind of surprised by that. So, I mean, we're going to obviously have to depend on Adam Troutman in this one to potentially get some of the work. As well as Chris Manhertz. That's really, really interesting to not have Nate Atkins active. Ben Neiman, who was signed to the active roster recently, he's inactive. Thomas Incoom, rookie edge rusher. Alex Forsyth, inactive for this one. Keandre Coburn, the guy that we claimed, I believe, or that we signed, he was initially with the Kansas City Chiefs, defensive lineman. Elijah Garcia, also inactive for this one. I'm kind of hoping that at some point soon Garcia gets his opportunity, because I really think that Garcia could make a potential impact. Oh boy, my screen's glitching out. Okay, we're good. So yeah, there we go, guys. Those are the inactives for the Denver Broncos, and I know a lot of people are curious as to why J.L. Skinner is consistently inactive. It's mostly because he really, really struggles in coverage based on what we've seen in training camp. And that makes me feel like Sean Payton and Vance Joseph don't currently trust him. Same with obviously Christian Parker, the DB's coach. I just don't think that he is currently trusted. Why is Atkins inactive? I'm not sure, honestly. That might be just a numbers game that the Denver Broncos are playing. Maybe they have somebody else active. I'm not sure. Somebody else at another position, I should clarify, but I'm not sure exactly why they have Nate Atkins inactive, because I thought that there was a chance that he could be utilized in this one. I was actually watching Orange and Blue Today, hosted by my guys Cecil Lammy and Andrew Mason, and they were talking about Jaleel McLaughlin, and there's kind of a tendency that the Broncos show whenever Jaleel McLaughlin is on the field. I believe it was 70% of the time or something like that, according to Andrew Mason. 70% of Jaleel McLaughlin's snaps, he's the one who's getting the football. That could potentially lead to the Denver Broncos utilizing Jaleel McLaughlin as sort of eye candy. And one thing that was talked about, and I absolutely agree with this, was utilizing a heavy personnel set, maybe 2-3 tight ends, Jaleel McLaughlin in the backfield. The defense is going to key into Jaleel McLaughlin. Okay, he's probably going to get the football. What they could do instead is leak the tight end out on a little bootleg, have him kind of get lost in the trash, and then leak out onto the opposite side of the field. You see teams do that pretty routinely and pretty frequently. I think that that could be almost like taking the Broncos' current tendencies with Jaleel McLaughlin and flipping it on its head a little bit and making the Bills have to second guess themselves and respect other elements of the game whenever Jaleel McLaughlin is on the field. That is one thing that I'm hoping to look for in this one, and I thought that Nate Atkins could actually play a role in that. So it's curious indeed that Nate Atkins is inactive for this one. Gabe says Garcia has looked good whenever he gets his chance. I agree. He's looked really good, especially in training camp at the preseason, but right now it just kind of feels like a numbers game. We've seen more Mike Purcell on the interior defensive line recently, and a little bit less of Matt Henningsen and a little bit less of Jonathan Harris. So the Broncos have made some changes on the interior defensive line recently that have worked out pretty well. Usually a healthy scratch based on matchups. I'm assuming you're alluding there to J.L. Skinner, Jim. Mims needs to get more involved for sure, and Sean Payton's talked about kind of why Marvin Mims hasn't gotten involved. And at the end of the day, I think it boils down to some of it has been a little bit too much has been piled onto his plate. He's kind of struggled a little bit with some rookie mistakes, lining up in the wrong spot, drops, fumbles, things like that. I feel like that's why Marvin Mims hasn't really seen the field too much in the last few games on offense. On special teams, he's still made a big impact on returns, but overall, Marvin Mims has been kind of faded away from the offensive game plan. I'm curious to see if coming out of the bye week that the Broncos maybe go, okay, let's see if Marvin has gotten over some of these rookie growing pains, and maybe we could start utilizing him a little bit more in certain offensive packages. We could start throwing him some of those deep balls off post routes and stuff like that we were utilizing him in the beginning of the season. I felt like they tried to feed him the ball a little bit too much on jet sweeps and reverses and stuff like that, which he can do. It's just he was almost overutilized in that role, and it wore on him. So I'm curious to see if the Broncos are going to let Marvin Mims out of the doghouse and unleash him a little bit now that we are coming out of the bye week and heading into this really critical stretch of the season, because Marvin Mims, along with Jaleel McLaughlin, are two of your home run threats that can take the ball a long distance anytime they get it in their hands. And right now, we've seen Jaleel McLaughlin pretty heavily integrated into the offensive game plan, and that's because mentally he's ahead of the curve right now in comparison to Marvin Mims. Excuse me. Kroll's supposed to be more dynamic. I hope so. Yeah, I'm curious to see what Kroll provides. I haven't done a whole lot of research or analysis on him. Obviously, I kind of researched him a little bit when we first brought him in, but I'm curious to see if Kroll plays, or what kind of role Kroll plays tonight, I should say. Danny says, what's wrong with Garcia? He was a preseason future Hall of Famer. It's just kind of a numbers game right now. You got to have a certain number of inactive players, and yeah, right now it's just kind of a numbers game. There are other players on the interior defensive line that they want to give action to. It's kind of as simple as that. Love your insight and celebration after the Chiefs win. Keep it up, my friend. Thank you so much, Danny. I appreciate it. I like the Love Been a fan since 1977. That's awesome. That is absolutely awesome. I've been a fan since 2006. And plan to be a fan the rest of my life, man. I live and breathe NFL football. Just kind of checking things out over here on the TV. Seeing what is rocking and rolling over there in Buffalo. Okay, it doesn't look like the players have hit the field for warm-ups yet. Or, well, they probably have done the initial warm-ups and they're in the locker room now, probably dressing out and stuff. And then once they dress out, they'll hit the field again and do other pregame warm-ups, quarterbacks, centers, all that stuff. Little quick team scrimmage. And then they'll head back into the locker room real quick. They'll do all the pregame theatrics, introduce the Bills. That's kind of the process for an NFL game for those who have never been to a game in person. I've never been to a game outside of Mile High, so maybe it's a little bit different for other stadiums, but at least that's the process that I know how it goes down at Mile High. Any late news on the Buffalo defensive starters? Well, it does indeed appear that their linebacker Terrell Bernard is going to play. That's a big addition for them. He's stepped into a big role for them ever since really Tremaine Edmonds departed in free agency, and then he turned into their green dot player, their main defensive signal caller after Matt Milano got injured for the season in that London game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So having him back is going to certainly help the Bills defense, but obviously Tre'Davious White is out for the season, and then Matt Milano out for the season, and then inactive tonight we have Micah Hyde, their star safety, and Christian Benford, their starting corner. So this Bills defense is rocking pretty short-handed tonight, and they're also adjusting still to a new defensive play caller. Sean McDermott, the head coach, has taken over the defensive play calling duties. David, thank you so much for the $50. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you. Says Broncos will thrash the Bills. All right, guys, be sure to leave a score prediction down in the chat below. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what the score is going to be tonight, what the overall theme of the game is going to be. Again, David, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that. That is absolutely awesome. But Anyway, I kind of lost track a little bit. Oh yeah, in terms of the Broncos offense, this is just a chance for the Broncos offense against a shorthanded Bills defense to really showcase their ability to keep up with a Bills offense that's trying to get back on track. Honestly, they've kind of sputtered, especially down in the red zone. They've moved the ball well. They've just struggled to actually cash in the red zone and score. That was one of their biggest bugaboos, especially in that Cincinnati game last week. The Broncos have had a pretty decent red zone defense this year. Vance Joseph has had good red zone game plans. So that's going to be something that the Broncos are hoping to be able to continue in this matchup. If we could shock the world tonight, we could go on a good run. More worried about the down the road facing CJ Stroud than Josh Allen tonight. Again, man, there's Josh Allen right there getting warmed up along with Stephon Diggs. This is a beginning of a really tough stretch of games for the Buffalo Bills. This is one that they really have to win in order to get their season back on track. That's some context for tonight's game. Let's go ahead and pull up the Buffalo Bills schedule here. So, Bills, obviously, Denver tonight, and then they've got the New York Jets, who absolutely embarrassed them in week 1 with that walk-off field goal. Josh Allen easily played his worst game of the year, throwing 4 interceptions in that game. Then they've got Philadelphia on the road, KC on the road, Dallas at home, and then the Chargers, whatever you want to make of them. So this is the beginning of a really tough stretch of games here for the Buffalo Bills. Now, conversely, if we look at the Denver Broncos schedule, obviously we've got back-to-back primetime games with the Bills tonight and then the Vikings next week at home on Sunday Night Football. I will be at that game as per every home game. We got Michael Ronquillo in the house. Good to see you, Michael, all the way from Tucson, Arizona. Hopefully you are doing well, my friend. There is Russell Wilson getting warmed up, rocking those brown hoodies that the NFL's been rocking for, I believe it's Salute to Service Month. I'm not a huge fan of the color personally, but I can at least respect the cause. You know how it goes. Then, again, the Texans game, as has been alluded to already, that's going to be a really, really tough game for the Denver Broncos with C.J. Stroud playing as well as he is. D'Amico Ryans has really done a turnaround, a quick turnaround of the culture in that locker room. Sean Payton is hoping to do the same thing here in Denver to a program that struggled for a longer period of time, at least in recent history, than the Texans program has. The Texans have at least had some recent success as a franchise, but ultimately they were never been able to get over the hump. They're hoping that the combination of CJ Stroud and D'Amico Ryans will get them over that hump. We've got the Broncos obviously then going on the road to take on the Chargers, an opponent that has been very vulnerable over the course of this season. We all know the Chargers at this point. They're the Chargers. They can choke any game that they're supposed to win. They'll beat up on a bad opponent. This is a game where the Broncos have historically won against Justin Herbert and the Chargers in Denver and then lost them in LA. I actually think there's a chance that the Chargers could that the Broncos could sweep the Chargers this year. But again, that's a little bit further down the line. This Lions game is going to be super tough. Lions, one of the best teams in the entire NFL. Patriots are poverty. I'm really confident in a win there on our final primetime game of the season, Christmas Eve night. Chargers again at home. Already talked about those clowns. And then the Raiders, obviously, they're undergoing a bit of a transitionary period as an offense in disaster relief mode coming off of Hurricane Josh. So I don't know what the Raiders are going to be as a team headed into that point of the year. Maybe they turn things around as a team with Antonio Pierce leading the way. Aiden O'Connell, I thought, looked decent enough in last night's game over the Jets. The Jets should have won that game, but Zach Wilson just couldn't get it done in a critical time. Threw an interception. Jets defense got him the ball back, and then he wasn't able to make hay with it. So, yeah, man, I don't know what to make really of this Raiders team right now. I need to see a little bit more of the sample size now that we've removed Josh McDaniels from the equation. But on paper, at least, there are a lot of winnable games for the Denver Broncos on this slate. And the Broncos, this is a period where they're going to have to basically go like 7-2 or whatever it is in this next period of games. They can only really afford to lose, really. You can afford to lose either or the Bills game or the Texans game, and then you can afford to lose. That's really about it. Maybe you can afford to lose like the Lions game. Yeah, you can afford to lose the Lions game, and then you can afford to lose either the Texans or the Bills game. You can only lose two games. That's it. That's what the Broncos have to do in order to potentially make a push for the playoffs. RMAC Sports says Raiders still trash, beat two teams without quarterback. Yeah, I mean, the Raiders are definitely still a struggling franchise, but it's just at least good to see. I mean, I can't say it's really good to see it because it's the Raiders, but anytime a franchise rids themselves of Josh McDaniels, it's a good thing for that franchise moving forward. And I at least like to see Davante Adams not so upset with the overall situation that he's throwing his helmet on the sideline, because that's not who Davante Adams is. He's known as one of the more upbeat and positive players in the NFL. That's what getting rid of Hurricane Josh will do to you. Do we trust the Broncos to only lose two games? Man, that's tough. It is tough, but again, there are just a lot of beatable opponents down the stretch on the schedule. Chargers, the Vikings, obviously, they've played some good football in the last few weeks with Josh Dobbs now taking the helm, but I'd say they're potentially beatable. The Browns, Deshaun Watson's health is once again in question. I honestly think, though, the Browns could be a better team without Deshaun Watson low-key. Patriots, very winnable game, and then the Raiders as well. So there are some winnable games here on this slate. We've got to take care of business either tonight in this Bills game or in this Texans game, coming off of back-to-back wins against the Vikings and Browns. We've got to take care of our business, guys. It's that simple. We've got to take care of our business. Who will have an interception tonight against Josh Allen, Simmons or PS2? I honestly wouldn't be surprised if it's someone like Jaquan McMillan. Maybe McMillan gets back-to-back interceptions. Chargers gonna Charger, Antelope says. Allen could throw 2 picks, Jim says. Absolutely, he could. He's been very turnover prone in recent weeks. Obviously, week 1, he threw 4 interceptions. Josh Allen has been kind of asked to play hero ball for the Buffalo Bills on offense, and it's really worked to their detriment at various points throughout the season. There is a strong chance Josh Allen could throw 2 picks. Raiders are playing for each other. Nope, not at all. This team will beat the Bills and Vikings and then lay an egg to the Browns. That's the one that I just really hope they don't lay an egg to. I mean, the Browns' offense has really sputtered at various points throughout the season. Deshaun Watson is Deshaun Watson. I don't really want to get into that whole rabbit hole right now, but that's the one game that I really hope the Broncos can get a dub at. I'd rather lose to the Vikings, honestly, than lose to the Browns. Raiders are going to get crushed by the Dolphins next week. Yeah, I agree. Raiders quarterback did his job. He did. Aiden O'Connell did well enough for the Raiders to win last night. I don't think he's their quarterback of the future or anything like that, but he's been decent enough. Browns are real tough. They are tough, especially their defense. Their defense is easily the best defense in football. Hats off to what Jim Schwartz has done. They've got a lethal defensive line. Obviously, they've got Myles Garrett, Zadarius Smith, Shelby Harris, Dalvin Tomlinson on that interior. They've got Denzel Ward in the secondary, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. That whole defensive unit, Anthony Walker, they're just filled with dogs and studs, man. So that's going to be a really tough outing for the Denver Broncos offense. But I think that the Broncos defense also has the potential to make life hell for Deshaun Watson or whoever the Browns trot out there at quarterback. Deshaun currently dealing with a bit of an ankle injury. So it's going to be interesting to monitor that whole Browns quarterback situation. This could be a defensive struggle for sure. Not a whole lot of points scored. It could be like a 13-10 football game or something along those lines. Ravens gave them that game yesterday. They really did. Lamar did not play well in the final portion of that game. So that's just another point there for the Broncos potentially being able to beat the Browns. But it all is predicated, again, guys, on the Broncos taking care of their own business. They've figured some things out over the past couple of weeks. They've established the run game. They've figured out some of their defensive bugaboos, especially when it comes to stopping the run. I think that the Broncos, although it hasn't been perfect by any means, the Broncos have gotten better in terms of stopping the run. They're not as god-awful as they were towards the beginning of the year in the Washington game, especially in the Miami game. That was probably one of the main reasons why we lost that Miami game, was that we were just completely anemic against the run in that one. It's gotten a lot better over the last couple of weeks. That's for damn sure. Jim Miller says, I'm rooting for Josh Dobbs. Me too. It's such an awesome story, man. Josh Dobbs has really kind of bounced around the league over the past couple of years, especially. Prior to that, he was a longtime backup to Ben Roethlisberger with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Has such a fascinating background with NASA, and literally he's like an astrophysicist or something like that. I mean, the dude is just incredibly intelligent. You can see that being able to transition from one offensive scheme to another almost seamlessly. Kevin O'Connell and him seem to have a really good working relationship. So that's just a really awesome story. That Vikings game is going to be really fun. Under the lights here in Denver in prime time. I'm excited to be able to attend that game in person. Little side nugget, it's going to be Dalton Reisner's return to Denver. I know there's going to be some fans that are excited for that, some fans that are a little bit salty about the whole Dalton Reisner situation. So that's a little fun side nugget to follow. Preview for next week's matchup. Michael says Von Miller will play against the Broncos for the first time. I miss Von playing in the orange and blue. He'll still have a place in my heart. Absolutely, man. I think Von will still have a place in everybody's heart. And just like I said at the beginning of this stream, I'm pretty certain I will end up shedding a tear at some point in time, because Von Miller is responsible for the single greatest football memory of my life, which is Super Bowl 50. He's one of the best Broncos of all time. He's on my Broncos Mount Rushmore. He's going to be my next jersey that I pick up, the 58. It's going to be the royal blue version. Oh, man, I'm already starting to get a little emotional about it, man. This one's going to be tough. It would be a lot tougher for me if it were at Mile High, but yeah, this one's going to be tough. But with Von, we've already talked about him a little bit. He's kind of struggled a little bit getting back to his old form after this ACL injury. It's been a little bit of a rough past few weeks for Von Miller. He's going to be trying to really get back on track tonight. Last week, he had a really tough missed tackle in the back of the ends, or in the backfield on Joe Mixon, that could have given the Bills offense a chance to go downfield and win the game. Joe Mixon broke the tackle from Vaughn. He got a first down. Bengals were able to kneel out the clock and win the game. That one is a play that's kind of live in Vaughn's head a little bit. So, yeah, man, this is one where you know Vaughn's going to be a little emotional before the game. Seeing everybody pregame, I imagine that's already happened by now. Yeah, man, I'm already starting to get a little choked up about this one. This one's going to be emotional for sure. I would like to see the rookie Ross from Iowa. He needs to get some reps out to bring him out and see what he can do. I got to be honest, I haven't started college scouting yet. What position is he? I have not started scouting college players yet. I'm going to do that probably here in a couple weeks. I generally start right at the beginning of December. We got D-Rock in the house. Good to see you, man. Hope you are doing fantastic. Gage in chat, how high, mile high? Doing really well, my man. PJ Locke will get one of the interceptions. That'd be awesome to see. Obviously, he got the pick off Jordan Love. And I think we really need to have a serious conversation about PJ Locke. I think that he's earned that starting safety spot over Kareem Jackson. Jackson will be eligible to return after this game, and I think that PJ Locke isn't going to give up his starting spot. We can just relegate Kareem Jackson to sort of a dime backer role. He can be down near the line of scrimmage where he can be physical and lay the wood on people legally. But I just don't feel comfortable at this point in time dropping Kareem Jackson back in coverage. PJ Locke has been the more dynamic player in the much smaller sample size. I think we need to roll with the higher potential at this point in PJ Locke. Kareem Jackson isn't getting any younger. That's not to say that he won't have a role on this defense and he won't be a big leader on this defense in the locker room, but right now, full time at the safety spot alongside Justin Simmons, I really feel like it's time to insert PJ Locke in that position full time. I'm curious if you guys agree with me on that sentiment. I see already that DS does. I miss Vaughn too. I still have his jersey, not giving it away. Always Bronco, 100%, man. Vaughn will always be a Bronco. As soon as he finally hangs up his cleats, he'll be back here in Denver doing the jersey retirement, doing the Ring of Fame, all that stuff. Vaughn still has indebted loyalty to the Denver Broncos. He always will. He said himself that he wanted to return in free agency in 2022. He was waiting for the call from the Denver Broncos. Unfortunately, it never came. I know there will be a lot of rough sentiment towards George Payton for that move. Lay the wood on people legally is a crazy statement. I mean, it's true though. That's what Kareem Jackson gets paid to do. He's just got to do it within the realm of the rules. It's that simple. Our safety lineup has been good lately. I agree. It definitely has. David Sills and Lucas Kroll have been elevated. Yes, we've talked about that also, Michael. I really am excited to see what Lucas Kroll provides. I haven't really done a whole lot of research on him. I did a little bit when he was first brought into Denver. I know that he can be a little bit dynamic and as a playmaker. He runs a pretty nice 40 time, I believe. So I'm curious to see what Lucas Kroll provides. And then David Sills, he was a predominantly special teams player for the New York Giants, but he initially joined the league in 2019 as an undrafted free agent by the Buffalo Bills, but they cut him in training camp. So maybe Sills has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder going against the Buffalo Bills. You never know. I think that we'll mostly see Sills on special teams tonight, but who knows? Maybe they sprinkle him in for a play or two here on offense. K-Jack's a thumper, but he's a liability. Yeah, 100% D-Rock. That's exactly how I see it. He can still play a role as a hitter down near the line of scrimmage. He can make an impact in the run game. He can make an impact against like the short passing game, the swing passes, screens, that kind of stuff. He can blitz, but I don't really trust Kareem Jackson at this point in time in coverage. He was a major reason why the Broncos struggled so much in that Miami game, especially, but in other points throughout the season. The Broncos defense has really turned things around ever since Kareem Jackson was taken out of the lineup via ejection. I don't think that's a coincidence. And I like Kareem Jackson a lot, especially what he brings as a leader to the locker room. Obviously, he's very, very, very highly respected in the locker room because of how many players rushed to defend him after this whole situation, saying he's not a dirty player. He's one of the best leaders in the locker room, that a lot of players in Denver wouldn't be the same player that they are today without K-Jack's leadership and initiative. But at the same time, man, there's just kind of the fact that Kareem Jackson is 35 years old or whatever it is and is not getting any younger. And PJ Locke is a player that's got a lot of upside as a younger player. And we have to tap into that potential, because even though we're trying to go into a competitive rebuild right now and trying to make a playoff push, we're still trying to add more talent to this roster. We've got, it feels like, the right core, the right foundation in place. We just have to build off of it and add more talent as we go along. And we have to determine if guys like PJ Locke are going to be a part of that reloading, rebuilding, retooling process, however you want to phrase it, moving forward. So that's why I feel like at this point in time, Kareem Jackson, love you, buddy, but it's time to demote you to a more niche role as opposed to a full-time starting safety. And that's what the Broncos were doing with Kareem Jackson at the beginning of the season. That's the role that he signed up for when he returned to Denver. What's going on, Jess? Good to see you. Let's get this dub. Absolutely. But that's the role that Kareem Jackson signed up for when he returned to Denver. But Caden Stearns getting injured is what kind of threw a monkey wrench into that plan. Same with PJ Locke getting injured. I actually feel like PJ Locke would have replaced Caden Stearns in the lineup right away, and Kareem Jackson would have still been in his same role had that injury not taken place. So I'm just glad that PJ Locke is now healthy and we can at least entertain this conversation, and the Broncos already have entertained it. And I'm pretty certain the decision has been made that PJ Locke will indeed be the starter at safety even when Kareem Jackson returns. So good to see you, Jess. Sorry, I just didn't want to lose my train of thought there. That lock pick was epic, Jim says. Absolutely was. Absolutely, that was awesome. He literally ranged from the other side of the field to get that pick on Jordan Love. It was a terrible throw by Jordan, a terrible decision, but it was also a chef's kiss play by PJ Locke. JT says Kareem is a heat-seeking missile ready to launch on the field. He is, but he's also a liability having to go downfield and cover guys. I can accept that, and that's okay. But putting K-Jack in more of a niche role is going to be more beneficial both for himself and the team moving forward. That's perfectly fine by me. I don't think K-Jack's going to like it too much, but I also think he can understand it as well, if that makes any sense. Gage, did you see the pic of Vaughn in PS2 before the game? I did not. I know there's going to be a lot of emotional pictures out there. Let me see if it's on like the Broncos Twitter. I imagine the Broncos Twitter will be putting pictures of Vaughn up and stuff like that. Oh, yep, there it is. Vaughn rocking the cowboy hat. Oh, this is awesome, guys. This is absolutely awesome. I love that. Antelope says, gotta go. I'll be back for the game reaction. All right, sounds good, Antelope. We'll be getting started probably around 6 o'clock. Side question, will the Broncos spend another draft pick on a tight end this year? I probably feel like they will, honestly. The tight end position has not returned at the level that they've wanted it to. Here comes Russell Wilson taking the field right now. Broncos rocking their all-white uniforms, including, well, not the white helmet, but the white socks, white undershirts. It's pretty much almost a whiteout. That actually would be a clean look with the white helmet. But in terms of a tight end, yes, I think the Broncos will add to that room. Greg Dulcich hasn't been able to stay on the field. Obviously, Adam Troutman, Chris Manhertz, Nate Atkins are all kind of limited in what they can do. They need a true do-it-all tight end. Wouldn't be surprised at all if the Broncos used one of their top picks on a tight end. Haven't started scouting yet, so I don't know who the top ranked tight end is. But whoever that guy is, the Broncos might have to entertain taking him, especially if we end up in like the number 9 overall pick range that we're currently projected to earn if the season goes how it continues to go. And if we're in a playoff spot, we'd obviously have a pick in the 20s. So that's when we'd really have to entertain a tight end possibly. So yeah, I absolutely think so, D-Rock. I'm just not sure who yet. I can't really answer that question there. I'll start scouting a little bit more as we get into December, and that's when I'll have more answers in regards to who for you. What's up, bro? Run the ball, Esteban says. How you doing, man? Good to see you. Yeah, absolutely. And we've already talked about that quite a bit. The Broncos are going to probably emulate a very similar game plan offensively. Just establish the run game with Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin. Get a high volume of carries in there. One thing that might differ a little bit is they might start taking more and more of those deep shots off of play action than they did in the last couple of weeks, especially in that Kansas City game where it was a lot more. There were some deep balls. It wasn't really exactly play action deep balls. It was more just 50-50 chuck one up and hope that your guy comes down with it kind of situations. But I'm hoping maybe we can scheme up some post routes for Marvin Mims. This might be the game where we kind of let Marvin Mims out of the doghouse coming out of the bye week and see what he can do. See if he's kind of overcome some of those rookie bugaboos. So yeah, that's going to be really, really interesting. Merlot says PS2 versus Diggs. That's going to be a big matchup, and I think that the Broncos are going to be bracketing Stephon Diggs most of the night. They'll be putting probably him and PS2 and Justin Simmons on him, and then they'll probably be bracketing Dalton Kincaid, I imagine, with probably PJ Locke and then maybe Josie Jewell or Alex Singleton. I'm a little more comfortable with Jewell. Maybe even Drew Sanders, honestly. I'm curious to see what their plan is to handle Dalton Kincaid, who's really emerged as more of a secondary target for Josh Allen. If we can take those guys away and basically play bracket 2 and then man coverage underneath, then that would be the most ideal situation. Force Josh Allen to either check to a run or spread the ball around to other playmakers such as Gabe Davis, Deontay Hardy, James Cook out of the backfield, guys like that. So that's kind of the game plan in a nutshell there for the Denver Broncos defense. And then offensively, again, we've got to run the football. We've got to run the football. That's the big plan there. Bills tight end, real good. Yeah, Dalton Kincaid, man, has been just an absolute has been a really good find for them. Obviously, there were the first several weeks where he wasn't utilized to the level that a lot of Bills fans wanted him to get utilized at, but he's gotten a lot more utilization over these past few weeks for sure. All right, Broncos country, I'm going to have to dip out of here and start getting ready for the stream. Let me know, guys, before we dip out. I know we already got some score predictions, but if you guys haven't left your score prediction, please be sure to do so. I am very curious to see how you guys think that the overall theme of this game is going to go. Are the Broncos going to be able to keep up with the Bills tonight? Are the Bills going to come out with their hair on fire? Are the Broncos going to come out with their hair on fire? Let me know your overall game prediction and score prediction in the chat below before we get out of here, guys. Merlo says, get your popcorn, Jess. I read that in my Richard Sherman voice. It's going to be a fun matchup. You know that there will be a lot of talking, man. I don't think either one of those players is going to be wearing a mouthpiece tonight. That they'll be jawing back and forth pretty much all evening. That alone is going to be very entertaining television. Well, they stopped Kelsey pretty well. Broncos 24, Bills 23. Jim says, see you, Gage. Good luck, Broncos. And guys, please be sure to join us for the game stream. Do not forget about the game stream. In fact, let me go ahead here and get us the link for the game. Sorry, guys, bear with me. Be sure to join us, guys. We'll have live play-by-play, score, game audio, all that good stuff. We'll do some live play breakdowns for any highlight-worthy plays. Anybody who's joined our game streams knows that they are a really good time. So there is the link to the stream, guys. We'll be going live here in about 30 minutes. I'm watching Perna on GPS. Oh, nice. That's going to be a really, really fun one as well. Are him and Grossi doing it together? I know that their stream, Broncos-Packers, was pretty epic. So I know that's going to be a really, really fun stream as well. All right, guys. Before we dip out, please be sure to leave a like on the stream as well as subscribe and ring the bell so these videos and live streams appear in your notification feed. I would really appreciate it, guys. Again, those are two free and easy ways to show your support. As I always say, helps tell YouTube's algorithm to push us out and helps us get seen by more and more members of Broncos country just like you and me. I got 2 exams in the morning, Jess says, so I'll be watching later. Sounds good, Jess. Well, hopefully the Broncos can get a win tonight, and hopefully your exams go well. All right, guys. Thank you so much to everyone who tuned in. Thank you so much to David for the donation. Hope to see you guys here in about 30 minutes for the live stream. Be sure to follow the link. And until next time, guys, I'm your host, Gage Madrid, saying